Hello, this is Christian here, and welcome to week 1, getting started with PHP. So what is PHP? That's the question of the day, right? So as you can see here in the notes, it was created by this guy called Rasmus Lerdoff in 1994. He used that to, basically, it's a script, a piece of, I should say, a series of scripts written in C to track the visitors to his personal resume online and if his personal homepage. And so he just basically called it personal homepage tools. And that was the beginning of PHP. And then he made that scripts available in the open source community and Usenet's.net site. And then it was attracted by a lot of developers, a lot of users. They put into use. And it got a hold of this by these two really bright Israeli programmers. And they took that code under their wings and they revamped it, rewrote the whole core PHP cores, and they renamed it with the same name, PHP, but now it's a recursive acronym, which stands for PHP Hypertext Preprocessor. Okay, so the PHP is the acronym which is within itself. So that's what's called recursive acronym. But as you can see here, PHP is a server-side language. It's high level. It's used for general purpose, although it's still being used as the primary purpose for developing web applications. Okay, so we'll take a look at some of these dimensions of PHP, and so these all these here are, pretty much what PHP is all about. So I'm going to show you a diagram on my book, here, which I'm not supposed to show you yet, but because it's still in production, but I'll show you anyway. So I hope I don't get in trouble for doing that. But as you can see here, this is as you can see, a perspective of what all these languages are in relations to other languages, right? So other dimensions. So I only put here about, a couple of dimensions. There are many more. So you see the low level on the first column, the high level in the second column. If you go row-wise, you have the specific purpose languages in the first row. The second row down here is all the general purpose languages. So if you look at this, you have a lot more languages in the general purpose than the specific purpose languages. Then this big blue box here is where all the strongly typed languages are. And then the orange box here is the weakly typed language. Okay, so PHP in relation to all the languages is a weakly typed. It's a high level and it's general purpose. Okay. And so a high level is a language that is written in using like English terms or words or keywords or phrases that are human readable, right? Readable, versus something that is written in machine code, like binary numbers like zeros and ones, or assembly is considered low level because the syntax of the code is really, really difficult to write. And so even though it still uses, English characters, right? But it's considered low-level language. So these are the dimensions of any computer language, but we're going to focus only on PHP in this course. So I'm going to scroll down here to show you how PHP is processed first. Okay, so PHP is processed in this way from the server side. The three green tags or bluish tabs here are the server side. The blue one down here is on the browser, which is on the client side. So in order for PHP code to be converted into something that we can read in the browser, it needs to go through this process, these three processes here. Okay, so from PHP code, this is the raw code, to something called the opcode, and then from there it's going to be translated and converted to HTML before it's passed that to the browser to be rendered on the browser. So you have a client-side rendition versus server-side rendition. Okay, so this is the process of doing that. So PHP then is another dimension about the PHP language is the interpreted language. Okay, here versus a compiled language. Now, something that is most common or familiar with, most people is a compiled language. That is a language that needs to be compiled or converted into binary form. These are like Java, C, C++, C#, Visual Basic. All these are called compiled languages because once you write your source code in a code editor, you need to convert into a binary. So that process may take a lot of time, but once that's done, then the result of that is a standalone application or module that you can run. So usually a .exe file or executable file. So once you are done, then of course the output is really fast because you no longer need to go back and recompile it again. So that's the upside. The interpreted language is almost like the opposite of that. So you still need some type of a tool or a program to convert your code to the native code or code that the language is being used in that context. So in the PHP's case is the web browser, right? So that means all the code, the source code, needs to be interpreted into HTML. So the process is called interpretation of the code. The only difference between the compile and the interpret is that the interpret language happens live on the browser. Okay, so it does not need to compile the code into executable code, and once that you run that one time. It's not. It happens every time you reload the page, we make some changes to the page, you refresh it, you click something else on the page, it gets interpreted live. And this is why it's called interpreted. So in that sense, it's really it could be slow, right? Because it needs to process that every time you run the code. And so, like things and languages like JavaScript, you maybe know that, Python, Ruby, Perl, all these are interpreted language. They interpret the code live on the browser. Okay, so that can take a lot of time, but it's very convenient and it's perfect for web applications. All right, so that is the difference between the two. Okay, so PHP has something called a Zen engine. This is the engine that powers PHP. It processes everything here, has a parser to parse your code, and then the interpreter will interpret it and convert it to HTML. All right, so that's that. Now the next thing, if I go back to the other file, these again just some features about PHP. Okay, this is more about the syntax more than what it is about. So this is the most common extension. We'll talk about this later. Used for PHP file. It is open source, so that's why it's free, and it's multi-platform. So as you can see, it runs on any of these platforms here, and the most common web server that runs PHP is Apache still. Okay, it's free open source. Of course, you have others too, but this is the Apache server, and you might have heard the term LAMP stack. Okay, LAMP means it's an acronym for Linux. Okay, Apache, and the M stands for MySQL, the main database system used for LAMP for PHP. Or now you might hear the name MariaDB, which is a replacement of the MySQL because MySQL is no longer open source. I guess it's owned by Oracle, so they make some modifications. So the communities don't really like that, so they came up with another one called MariaDB. Still M, right, for LAMP. And then of course the P is for PHP. So you have the LAMP stack. So when you hear the term, that's what it means. Okay, so these are just the release history of PHP. Again, the first release was in 95 by Rasmus, and then 97, 98 when the two Israeli guys, Ziv and Andy, took over. And they pretty much rewrote the whole core, and they renamed it to still PHP, but the acronym now stands for, again, PHP Hypertext Preprocessor. The acronym is this one here. If you take the first P and then hypertext and then that, you get PHP. But the P itself stands for personal home page. So the term recursive acronym. Okay, so that's pretty cool. So now we are 2019, so version 7 is still the latest stable version. We're still waiting for version 8. I'm not sure when that's going to come out, but I'm pretty sure eventually it will come out. Okay, so some notes about version 5 and 7. Okay, I should say version 5.3. Okay, well, 5.4, I guess. So these are things that if you're not familiar with PHP, I mean, don't worry about this magic quote stuff here. This is like old now. And so PHP 7 no longer supports the magic quote. And this was a huge issue back in the days when you, as a developer, you want to make sure all your code is secure and safe. And so you want to escape every code that comes into a web form from a web form that may contain some malicious code. And usually you will escape those codes, especially with a single quotation mark or a backslash or a double quotes, because those are very dangerous. When you feed that script into a SQL server or MySQL, it will actually cause some really bad code inside the database system to either wipe out your entire database or remove some data or vice versa. So it was very dangerous. It was a huge headache back then. And so PHP 4 5.4 later no longer supports that. In PHP 7, you can't use that anymore. So it gives the power back to the developer. So you can only use, you can escape, codes at your own choosing, because you run that under different contexts and so forth. So read more about it if you are interested in that, but it's no longer supported in PHP 7. These are also no longer supporting PHP 7 as well. In older versions, you can use a different syntax or different tags to write PHP code. This is commonly used in Visual Basic VB script, the %. And also you can use the script tag to say PHP script. Inside that, you can put your code in there. This is very common for JavaScript. In the old days, you have to specify the language, either PHP or VBScript or JavaScript. So this is no longer supported in PHP 7, so please do not use these at all in PHP 7. Okay, we'll use only the question mark and then the word PHP. Functions in the old days, in PHP 5, you can have the same name inside the parameter here. As you can see, it's as confusing as this can get, right? So you can't support that anymore in PHP 7. And last but not least, in PHP 7, you can use a strictly type inside a function head or a function return type to strictly set a parameter to use a certain data type here. Okay, as you mentioned, PHP is a loosely typed language. I'll show you in a minute. That means you cannot, you don't have to set the data type. But PHP 7, you can do that inside a function if you want to. Otherwise, you just leave it as is. Okay, so a few things in here as well. So read the notes if you have any questions and let me know. So I'm going to go into the code here just to show you a little bit about what PHP is when you say about loosely typed versus the strictly typed language. And also kind of give you an idea of how you can set up your PHP Storm IDE. If you are using PHP Storm, you are more than welcome to use any IDE of your choice. The only thing is that you make sure you run your PHP script on a web server that supports PHP. The easiest one is to download and run XAMPP, okay? And otherwise, just run directly from within PHP Storm. You can also use Eclipse to do that too. Eclipse does support PHP if you install the correct version. So if you install the one that says Eclipse for PHP developers, install that and you should be able to set that as well. I'll see if I can do a separate video to show you or find one to show you how to set that up. Okay, so here when you open PHP Storm, and let me close this now, you'll see something like this. If your existing projects will be listing here if you have some of them available. If not, it should be blank and you can create a new project here. So I'm going to create a new one and I'll be using this throughout the whole course to run the videos. So here inside my XAMPP folder, there's a reason why I put inside the XAMPP folder inside the htdocs, because this is where the server runs. So let's just say that if I'm outside of PHP Storm, I want to run my script on the server, I activate my XAMPP server and then I can access directly on that using the local host. Okay. Otherwise, you won't be able to run PHP. Okay, so here I'm going to go and create a folder for my project. I'll just call it PHP Fundamentals. Call whatever you want, just a folder name to house all your projects basically. Okay, so here as you can see, there's nothing in there yet, right? So then I can go ahead and create a new folder and I'll just call it a directory. We call it I'll call it module 1 instead of week 1, but I call it module 1. Inside here, then you can put all your scripts in here. So let me go ahead and create a new PHP file. So you can see PHP file and give it a name. You can call it anything you want. I should call it index. And then the dot extension will be PHP. As you can see, it has all these syntax created for us already. So that's great. And this is how you would write a PHP code, right? With the angle bracket, the question mark, the word PHP. This is the syntax that you should use in all situations. Okay, this is one way. Another way, if you want to export or execute code, is again, we'll show this later, is use the equal sign here, and then you can put some statements here like 2 + 2, right? And that will output the result to the browser or to wherever it is supposed to be output to, right? So that's that. So let's go ahead and just do something here in PHP. So when it mentions about a loosely typed language, like here, I'm going to go and move this out the way. So loosely typed language, okay, it deals with case sensitivity issues. I should also talk about that. I mean, let's go back and do that first. Well, anyways, so let's talk about case sensitivity first. Case sensitivity. It's hard to type. Okay, so PHP is both case sensitive and not case sensitive, depending on where you use or how you use it. So let's talk about the sensitivity issues first. So one thing is variable names. We'll talk about that later. That means it's case sensitive. If I have something like a variable called name, okay, if I give that Christian, okay, this is case sensitive. That means I cannot use like name with a capital N. If I do that, if I type in here, let's just say just Chris, right? Now these two are completely separate variable names because they have different casing here, right? So if I were to output that out, if I put echo here, my name, this one here versus the second one, they'll be different. So if I save this, and I'm just going to run on the command terminal here. So down here, if you see a terminal, click on that. And so you can run this, output this into the terminal without running on the browser, which is sometimes much quicker. So I'm already in here. I just type the word PHP, followed by my file name is index.php, and you see that it outputs. Oh, I probably had to go into the wrong directory. Yeah, into the module 1. So cd module 1 and cls to clear it, and then now I should see my index file there. Okay, so now again type in php index.php. You see that it has the names Christian and the word Chris after it, right? I did not put any line break, that's why you don't see that here. So if I put like echo line break for /n, \n for line break, that should put a line break. So if you run this again, just press the up arrow key and you see the two values here. Okay, so they are completely separate. If you put a lowercase in here, right, then you see that this is undefined and the Christian has been replaced, but then this is not defined, so therefore it doesn't exist. So you have an error. So just to show you that they are case sensitive. Okay. Another is the super globals. These are like, you know what, let me grab this file. I'll just show you probably much quicker that way. And sign my PDF again. So let's go over here. Okay, so here again, these are the case sensitive situations. Variable names are case sensitive. Super globals, these are 9 of them inside used in PHP. These came with it. You cannot change it. You cannot rewrite them. You just have to use them. So when I say case sensitive, you have to spell using these all uppercase like this, exactly the same as this. Okay. Then you have a constants. When you declare constants in PHP, you can use either the global constants, the global space, or class constants. We'll may or may not do this, but to show you that constant must be case sensitive. And by convention, they always capitalize, all uppercase like this. And also you see there's no $sign in front of it either, right? So this all uppercase by convention. Array keys, we'll do this later when we use the array. The keys here inside the array, or here, these are all case sensitive. This is an example of an associative array or an object. Okay, it always has the key value pair, right? Key value. And then this is the PHP NI directives. So these are inside the configuration file. You can change these. You can override these to something else if you want using PHP script, just to make sure that whatever is inside this file must match exactly the same as you would, otherwise it would not work. Okay, so these are case sensitive issues. Now the other one is case not insensitive. So function names are not sensitive. Okay, so you can call the built-in function. This is built into PHP. I can use all lowercase or the uppercase, doesn't matter. Any combination thereof, it should still be fine as long as I spell it correctly. If you have your own function or a custom function, same rule applies. You can still use all lowercase, uppercase, or mixture thereof. It doesn't really matter. Okay, class name is the same as functions. If you have a class name, call my class here. This is the convention. Of course, you can call it whatever you want when you run it. It doesn't matter. As long as you spell correctly, it will run. Okay, keywords, these are PHP keywords and there are many more. Things like if, else, the word function, true, false, all those stuff are keywords in PHP. They are not case sensitive, unlike Java. Okay, Java will be different. And then last but not least, these are called the magic constants. Again, these are built into PHP. There are about, I think, 8 of them. These are really useful for when you do debugging, or if you want to know what the name of the function is, what the name of the class is, the directory, and so forth. You can use this inside your PHP code directly by echoing them out, or just assign those into a variable and use them. And these are actually 2 underscores. Okay, you can't see here, but these are 2 underscores followed by the name of that constant, and then you close it with 2 underscores. So be very careful with that. You can write your code and your variable with the 2 underscores, but try not to use them because they can be confusing. You might override. You have a conflict with these constants here. Okay, I think that is what I want to show you. And so again, back in the code here, just make sure that when you name your variable, they must be they're case sensitive, and again, try to not use, like, when you have your constant, right? Constant, try not to use these because these may have a problem with your with the global or super global or the magic constants. Okay, I think that's it. And if you have any questions, please do let me know.